The Floating World and the Legend of the 5 Bamboo Fly Rods by Gabe Batson. Here beginneth the tales of the floating world and the legend of the 5 bamboo fly rods. Chapter 1. Anju. In the morning light, when a dream of you comes true, I open my eyes. The music of the engine echoed through the canyon of buildings. Elbace's rival raced towards Anju. Another moment apart is a wasted moment. When together, there's elation. But as the sun rises, will she disappear? The cylinders rang. He adjusted attitude and moved through the shifter. Third gear, all 3 pedals at once. Second gear, the tires squealed. There's a temple where they came to worship the goddesses. Anju stood in its radiance of limestone reflecting in the evening sun. Elbace tore into the parking lot. She ran to him in a reckless way, but he didn't feel fear. It was pure panic. He was not used to this kind of demonstration. She was delicate as an iris made of frosted glass and cool like icicles melting into tears. She confronted the car in the faint mist, her eyes deep with excitement. She waved with one hand and then with 2 hands. Pretty in Dior, her dress illuminated by headlights. He dared to say hello and she said bonsoir, like she was still learning French. Romance and anxiety always go well together. They embraced, creating warmth with their joining cheeks on chilly faces. The crisp autumn wind swirled dry leaves. The time spent together felt like eternity, as did the time spent apart. They walked to the building through the dry leaves kicking up an earthy aroma. The temple was filled with ateliers where the raison d'etre was the creation of beauty. Down a well-lighted corridor, a room emitted hissing heat from steaming pleats. Another room was where delicate hands formed jewelry of radiating opulence. Another was for buttons, buckles, and snaps, and there was a small sign warning access interdicted. Anju said it was called the Cage, where 2 women weaved precious tweeds on ancient looms, tulle, chiffon, lace, organza, and spangles. At the end of the hall, there was a large workroom. It smelled of leather and sounded like tapping hammers. On each table were trunks made with leather and polished brass. Women looked up from their workbenches. They beamed smiles, whispering and gesturing at Anju and Elbace. Anju said, "First we make the wooden box. Then they're covered with cloth or leather and reinforced with canvas." "Do you do all this while wearing such a beautiful dress?" asked Elbace. "Of course," she said. "How dare you suggest otherwise?" She showed him the contents of her tool tray. Cotton gloves, to work on precious leather. She held up an eraser, a rubber in order to pamper something, some tape, for when I need to tie something down, a punch, round holes will not tear, and some candy. Oops! She dropped a piece of candy on the floor. They both stooped to pick it up, and she gave him a peck on the lips and smiled. On her workbench was a large case that folded out into 2 sections with drawers, pockets, a mirror, and hinged secret compartments. "What's it for?" he asked. "It's a makeup case," she said. "All this for makeup? Somebody must be terrified of looking bad." A 4-woman walked up holding a clipboard. Anju said, "Bonsoir, mademoiselle. Please meet Elbace." "Enchanté," said the 4-woman. Anju explained, "I'm here to collect my things." She went under the table and brought out a long, thin trunk. "Bonne journée," said the 4-person. "Merci, mademoiselle," said Anju. They waved to everyone as they went out the door. Outside, they walked hand in hand. Her grip tightened. "I'm so excited for our trip." She stopped and faced him. "Lie to me and tell me you care." Leaves lifted in the wind. A man in an all-white suit, hat, and overcoat crossed the cobblestones. His scarf blew away. A woman rushed out of a patisserie and called to him. Anju and Elbace walked past a park. The moon was shining through the trees. Traffic flowed on the street. Anju unbuttoned the cuffs of Elbace's jacket. and pushed up his sleeves. "Don't you dare hide this mahogany skin." She rubbed his forearm with both hands. Since Elbace had been in Paris, he thought that he would stay if he could. Here he was celebrated as a man of music. Back in the States, he was treated otherwise, even if he could play jazz in different colors. Anju understood him. Her presence filled him with joy. It felt like they were destined to meet. But she was ethereal, and it was hard to believe she wouldn't someday blow away. "I'm so glad you can come with me. You'll have to see for yourself," said Anju as they held each other. They walked back to the car, its curves glowing in the lamplight. She put her trunk in the back and he started the car. 6 carburetors sucked air with determination. Anju and Elbace motored through town and rifled onto the autoroute out of the city. They drove through the night south and west. In the morning, they found an ancient road covered with trees. She directed him to a lonely gravel circle deep in the woods. As they got out of the car, cool air blew across their backs. She withdrew the long case and walked towards a calm and swirling stream. She said they were about to enter a world of its own. "Look at the surface. See how it is? Here, I'll show you." She opened the trunk and removed a tube with her fishing rod. It was made of bamboo and flexed easily after she assembled it. She attached a reel and deftly lined it up. After a couple of casts in the air, the fly drifted down to the surface of the river. "Watch how it floats," she said. He looked for the fly but did not see it until a split second before she lifted. "Watch again." She flicked the line out. Elbace searched again. It was a little tuft of feathers that looked like a bubble drifting along, but there was something else. As she dropped the fly a third time, he saw many, many things floating along with it. Flies were fluttering, bugs skittering, all sorts of things drifted along. A whole new level of existence snapped into sharp focus. The flow on the surface of the river was thick and rich, like a slowly rolling broth. For the first time, he became aware of an entirely new dimension before his eyes. He watched her fly float down when something violently swacked it, and her rod went into a deep bend. She chuckled as she cranked in slackline. The reel squealed with delight. The fish dove deep into the fast water and sank downstream. Anju ran along the bank. "It's getting away from me," she said. She removed her shoes as she switched the bent rod from hand to hand. The fish kept taking line as she stumbled over the rocks and splashed on the shallow bank. The fly line surged off the reel. She kept it running between her fingers. She took the palm of her hand and pressed it to the spinning part of the spool. The fish stopped and turned around and swam back towards her. She was in a reeling frenzy. The trout dove under some trees and stopped where there was a fallen trunk. "I think I might be hung up on that log," she said as she leaned to peer under the trees. She gave Elbace the rod, telling him to keep pressure on. Meanwhile, she wriggled out of her dress. She took the rod back and tiptoed over the smooth stones, but she slipped and fell in. The fish dislodged itself and started running again. She held the rod above her head, reeling as she treaded water until she could stand back upon the bank. She brought in the trout and crouched low and raised it out of the water. "What a strong fish," she said. It was long with a fat belly of most sumptuous butter. As it twitched in her hands, its silver and olive sides caught the light, illuminating spots of black, red, blue, and violet. Anju put it back into the water and pumped it back and forth until it swam away. "Well, that was fun," she said. Elbace helped her dress again, following the curves of her freckled shoulders. She looked at Elbace, the tips of her hair wet. "You're gonna catch a cold," he said. "I feel amazing," said Anju. They walked up a little path along the river. They came to a clearing encircled with trees. Anju said to Elbace, "Now it's your turn." "What do you mean?" he said. "Step into the stream," she said. "How can I do that?" he asked. She started laughing and gave him a shove. He thought she was being playful and started to laugh too. "What of my shoes? Surely you don't intend those to get wet." She giggled and shoved him again, this time hard. He stumbled forward until his shoes filled with water. He spun around with surprise and was faced with her flaming eyes and devious grin. She punched him hard in the chest. Elbace turned and put his arm out. Anju let out a yell and ran and jumped on his back. They both fell face first into the water. Elbace woke. He said into the darkness, "Why did you do that? I'm all wet." He felt the thighs of his trousers and thought, "No, I'm not wet at all. It's gotten warm out here." He looked around. "How long have I been asleep?" He raised himself on his elbows. "Where are you? Where are we?" He opened his mouth to say something else, but the lump in his chest anchored him to silence. The large leaves of plants surrounding them were deep green in the night, their edges glowing with luminous pearls. Anju's face radiated above him. Her hair flowed as if underwater. He recognized her, but she was not the same. "Do not be afraid," she said. "I'm kidnapping you." Was this the same Anju? He asked himself. Devious and mysterious Anju? How did we get here? Anju spoke again.
Welcome to the floating world. Welcome to the floating world.